Hi all. Right, made some actual progress today. With the front clip mould finally had over a week of curing. So we've taken the 5 sections apart. And yeah, so we now have a complete negative for the front clip, which so far so good. Took a little bit more time to get the last section off of the main surface piece here. Did find just right in these 2 little corners here, but I can sand them off. That's not really a problem. I can round them out. That doesn't really matter too much. So it's just the entry duct here for the fresh air. So super happy. Just threw some water on just to take the PVA off. Haven't done it on these pieces yet, or that piece. Yeah, looks yeah, super happy. The downside now is I've got to get back to polishing. So there we go. So it's probably 800, 1200. Yeah, a little bit of a thing there, which is a negative on here. It turns to a positive on that, which then sands off. Yeah, so let's go back to the fine sanding and then mop and polishing. But yeah, front clip mold done, which is excellent. I finally managed to pull another side pod off the mold that pre-released. So now we have the pair of side pods. I went back to old school. I went away from the Stoner pre-release, which is a shame. The Stoner 495, but for whatever reason, that was twice in a row I got pre-release on the gel coat. On the second time, I didn't even put any fiberglass behind it. It was literally just the gel coat, and the gel coat was pre-releasing on its own. So it literally was so good that it's just, yeah, it didn't even grip it, which is fine for resin infusion because you've got that 1 bar of pressure holding the part into the mold. So that would be fine on a 1 set, but if you've got a gel coat and then resin infused on top of the gel coat, you're goosed. Or at least I was anyway. So this one here, so this sill here, that came out of the mold with 475, and I was quite happy, but I had to go back to old school on the second side and basically had to bite the bullet, take the mold apart again, clean it, buff it with the fine paste, so basically try and remove as much of the stone as possible, and then put like 6 coats of wax in the mold. No PVA, just 6 coats of wax, and Bob's your uncle, she came straight out. So and no pre-release, so she's the actual shape. So yeah, just doing some trimming today. Trimmed the edges of the molds for the wing, and thought it would be time to this has been over a week, so trimmed the molds before they came apart, and now I've just pulled it out. So super happy with that. Yeah. As far as the car's concerned, somebody on Facebook, Judd, can't remember, has an Ultimate RS with a 2JZ motor. He posted up about a clutch that I didn't know existed, from Kennedy Engineering. I previously used 2 versions of the Kennedy pressure plate before, which basically was a stiffer pressure plate to give you more holding torque, but the only problem is it became a stiffer pedal, and I didn't like. I wanted to go multi-disc, but I didn't want multi-disc with a solid spool center. I want a sprung-loaded multi-disc if I could. Now I was going to go RPS carbon, which seems to be the go-to for silly numbers, but it's with the flywheel and the adapter for obviously the flywheel has to be LS, but the other end has to be Porsche. That was going to be, I think it's over $5,000 American, so that's like, it's going to be 6.5 Canadian thereabouts. It's a big chunk of change. Looking at Judd's clutch, messaged him, so thanks for that, Judd. Spoke directly to Kennedy once I realized it was actually another one of their clutches, and apparently in the last 12 months this is something they've come up with. So basically it's a twin 6-puck cerametallic kind of metal clutch, but effectively it'll take like 1100 foot-pounds of torque. And because it's a twin plate and therefore you've doubled the surface, it actually has a lesser pedal pressure than a standard 930 turbo, which was probably the clutch I was originally using on my old GTR. So I'm super happy because they make a flywheel, and I think the flywheel kit is only like about 600 American, and their clutch is less than $1,000. So I'm happy that there's something that I can use now, and that's the final part of the jigsaw for basically the drivetrain, is the clutch and flywheel. So one thing I just keep putting off because I knew I wasn't happy with what I had before, so I wasn't overly concerned about leaving it out. But this winter, once we set the body panels, this winter has to be done. Has to be ready, because I'm going to strip the whole car once I've done all the bracketry and put earth straps wherever I've got to do. Finished welding on the chassis, basically. We're going to strip it down probably January, February. Yeah, it's always the best weather to try and take stuff around. And we'll have the powder coating done on the chassis and the suspension and whatever else. So all this sort of cheap rattle can paint will just be blasted off. So yeah, so there we go. So both sides are all done, front clip mold done, so polishing away, probably in the next couple of weeks, hopefully before December. I'll start a new front clip, so we'll have two new side seals and the new front clip done. This is the other side seal. I was just cleaning it to put it back in storage temporarily. Last bit we're going to do, I made some alterations to the center clip mold. I needed more clearance around the rear roll hoop. So basically my insert that I use in the roof to produce that lower roof profile for the roof scoop, I've basically modified the back here and given myself a little bit more room. I had to cut the fiberglass on the one I've got on the car at the moment because it was just about as tall as the roll hoop. So I've given myself a nice sort of 3/8 of an inch step. So that now should clear, so I'll fiberglass that in. Plus the front section of here used to curve around. That's how I did it originally. Didn't like the shape of that, wanted it to be more straight. I wanted to make a slightly different top piece for the air intake for the engine. So I cut the corners off and reshaped those and just hit it with some more gel coat. So yeah, we're going to pull another, step back a bit. We're going to pull another center clip mold, or center clip part. So we'll have a nice white center clip that I don't have to worry about spraying, etc, etc. So basically that'll all be white. And down again we go. So yeah, just doing stupid little plumbing stuff. You know, mounting of the prompt for the gearbox, the thermostat, obviously the filters. There's one small bracket I got to make from the underneath for the oil, for the filter pre to the pump. But yeah, that's kind of all in. So we are making progress. It's a bit slow. Yes, it's got to be done. Don't have time today, unfortunately, to mount this, which is a bit of a shame. Was hoping to. But yeah, instead of having to spray gel coat on this so I could do a whole white gel coat car, I thought it might be just easier just to make a new one and have 2 layers of gel coat, because I think this is only done with like 1 layer of gel. And where this roll bar here basically wants to be roughly where the fiberglass is, now I'll have a relief to raise that up. And like I say, these corners here, instead of curving out, they're going to be quite straight, and then we're going to do probably a slightly different profile of here. So instead of being straight down there, I'm going to sort of come more of a fish mouth. But I just didn't like the way the lower part of the skin kind of went outwards. So I want it pretty much straight, and I'll make the top of this kind of not completely round, but we'll curve those side panels in a little bit. So that's the progress in the car. Lost my PC, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame. Hard drive took a proverbial dump on itself. So I've ended up kind of upgrading. It's an older desktop, but we've maxed the RAM and we've put 2 SSD drives in now, so the CAD package works a lot better. I did lose a couple of files since the last backup. The starter motor bracket as well, which is a real pain in the bum because I'm gonna have to redraw that. Luckily the intake hat and these pieces here, I'd sent the file to other people, so basically I retrieved it back from them, and I lost the oil tank, which is a shame, but not if I'm redoing the oil tank. We are going now to rubber hoses now onto the engine. Let's go on this side. Wasn't my original intention. I was just going to go AN fitting hoses. Yeah, basically, we're going to go rubber hoses. Oh, that's pretty tight. There we go. Mainly because the size of an AN-16 AN fitting, it was kind of getting in the way, even with a short one, to try and get all the fittings in. So I had to cram in basically 8 16-16 fittings in there, and it just became a bit of a nightmare. So I bought straight hose couplers back to the 16 AN O-ring type, and then basically we'll just use these twin 1.25" hose ends and mount them to the water supply that's going to come round to here, because the water pump sits directly behind the front wheel. Yeah, some minor silly little changes. Oh yeah, and I lost all the information from the dash as well, which is a bit of a pain. So I'm gonna have to redraw the dash, all the aluminium did for that, but serves me right not to back up the computer tip more often. Anyway, yes, so yeah, striking on with this. Hopefully by the tail end of this year, we really should have a virtually white front end on the car. The rear clip obviously is the one part that I've still got to do the mold for, but realistically that's not stopping me do anything for the moment. So I will put the rear clip back onto the car just to confirm sort of width dimensions once everything's set up, and then I'll pull the clip off and start the mold on that. But really that won't delay anything now on the car. I can do that, so I can laminate for like an hour and a half each day and then get on and do the rest of it. So it won't be a delay for the car. It'll just mean that the rear clip mold probably won't be finished until like February, March. So I'm not going to get a rear clip until beginning of the summer, but that's really not a big issue because it's not holding us up. Okie dokie. Speak to you all soon.